Welcome to session number 4 of my life story. And I'm sorry it's taken so long to upload this next episode, but it's surprising, although I was expecting some challenges and difficulties and fallout for sharing my life story with people for the first time in public, really. I've shared it in other ways, but only minimally over my life, that the impact it would have had on me, both in tiredness and challenges in many different ways, not least in warfare and battles and things that go on in your mind and also in your daily life, because the enemy doesn't want the truth to be shared with people about how, even though he's tried to take you out, I'm still here. Hallelujah. And also the other challenge that I've had is that I'm the sort of person who wants you to understand where I'm coming from and the context and the background. And so I've been rushing around like a doo-doo, trying to do a PowerPoint with loads of photographs so you could see where the location where I was born and all these things, what school I went to. So much so that I've been bogged down with that. So that's going to be postponed, but it's going to be called an intermission at some stage, where I will show you some photographs of the locations and things that I am talking about. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my early years jobs, because going alongside the bullying and the things that were going on at school and the abuse that was going on at church, I was also trying to keep myself busy so that in my head, I wasn't thinking about all these things. And so I, at an early stage, wanted to get a job, mainly because we were not a rich family. My dad worked all hours at God's End. My mum worked out at the co-op and then the greengrocers and different sorts of things to try and make ends meet. Even though we were in a subsidised council house, it was still a challenge because there was my brother and I. And so my first job was when I was about 13, and I worked in a local butcher's on a Saturday. And basically my responsibility with another couple of lads was to clean the whole place down, ready for it to close halfway in the afternoon on a Saturday and be shut on Sunday and then restart on Monday. And this involved the chopping blocks for all the meat and having a huge brush with spikes on where we'd grate the top of it off and then bleach them and then wash the all the knives and the meat slice machine, which was one which had a handle and used to slice, and these days, thinking about the health and safety of it, quite a thing to get a 13-year-old to dismantle a meat slicer and clean and put it back together again. And also to clean the counters and the refrigeration units and the display units and the floors and things like that. And then to sprinkle, shows how many years ago it was, and to sprinkle sawdust on the floor after we'd cleaned it. So it was quite a thing. But one of the challenges, I was only there for 6 months because the other 2 lads were in the same school as me, and they were friends with some of the bullies, so they didn't make my life easy. And also because I was trying to impress the owners of the butchers and do a good job, I used to go over the top and do more than was required and they believed I did it on purpose to make them look not as useful. It did put me off working for a while. And then I got a job working in a general grocery store. And it was about 2 or 3 miles away from where we lived. And it was run by a Mr. Atkinson, who was a lovely elderly gentleman who had some mobility issues in his legs from time to time. And my job was stocking the shelves and also working with the other lad who worked there to unload stock, put it in the storeroom, and assist wherever possible. And also, once again, to clean all the things with the meat slicing and bacon slicing machines and clean the place and keep it neat and tidy and welcoming for customers. And it was a sort of grocery store that had all the tin goods, but also it had cold meats and cheeses and bacons and hams, beef, but they were all fresh. He taught me how to. It was like a big box. We filled it with water. We used to boil our own ham and then slice it and make sausages and all sorts. And I got on really well with him. And again, I wanted to do a good job. And in the summer holidays, the store where all the stock was upstairs, and we weren't as busy because people went on holiday, but he's still worked on the Saturday. And I decided that I was going to tidy and clean and sort out the stockroom, because it was basically just above the store, just one huge room with columns of baked beans and tuna and all these other things. And I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll organize it so it's easy to find, so that all the vegetables are in one place, all the fish is in another place. Anyway, you can tell from the days of Mrs. Webb when I was in primary school and I used to clean out her cupboards and all that, it's one of my things. Anyway, it took me quite a long time, but because it was the summer holidays and some of his assistants were also on holiday, I worked during the week as well. So I had a whole week where I could set to, and the other lad, he was also on holiday. Anyway, as I was tidying, cleaning, I discovered quite a few open tins of ham and meat that had been consumed or left half mouldy, cans and bottles of beer that had been drunk. And Mr. Atkinson used to, when he felt well enough, used to come upstairs, and he noticed that all these things were there. And it was quite a lot of stuff, and it'd been hidden behind all the mayhem in the storeroom. And you'll find with subsequent jobs, as I share what happened in latter years, it seems to be one of the things that I do. And anyway, when the other lad came back off his holiday, Mr. Atkinson challenged him and discovered that it was him who, rather than spend his wages, thought, well, this place is full of food and drink, and I'll just have what's here. And so he was sacked. And you can imagine the fallout back at school, because all his mates were at school. So more and more I became isolated at school, and the bullies, whatever. And that's where I increased the opportunity to learn to play the violin, because that meant that I wasn't in the playground break times, and I was allowed to practice at lunchtime and stay after school. So I was trying to avoid lots of flash points, shall we say. And Mr. Atkinson and his wife liked me, and I got on well with them. And he wanted to train me to be a manager of his store. You know, I was only 14 and a half, 15, coming up to 15. But I wasn't quite sure and decided not to take up his kind offer. Then when it came to the end of secondary modern school, I took exams, and I think I said before that I got the Wallasey School Leavers Certificate in, I think it was 8 or 9 or 10 different subjects, and I got B pluses to A's. They didn't have O levels then, or GCSEs or whatever. It was just a local school leaver certificate. And when I finished at 15 because I thought, well, don't want to go to university. We couldn't afford me to go to university, even though I would have got a grant in those days, and I wouldn't have to. Wasn't alone. It was the idea of my parents having to pay for me to live somewhere else and all that. It just wasn't possible. And to be honest, I didn't really want to. But at 15, I decided that I was going to train to be a chef. And that's because I discovered there was a course at Birkenhead Technical College where I could do a 2-year course and learn to be a chef, learning French cookery. And I think I mentioned in the schools and education part about what happened at the college. That was a bit of a turning point in that I didn't go to sixth form college, but I did do correspondence courses. So I did an English and I did an RE O level by extension, and did the work at home and sent it off for marking, and got O levels in English and English language and English literature, and also in religious RE religious education, while I was at Further Education College. While I was there, I got my sitting gills, basic catering, and then advanced catering, and also hospitality and service. So that included serving tables, doing bookings, and all that sort of stuff. And I was invited, after doing the food hygiene course, to consider staying on for another year to do hotel bookkeeping, reception, and management, which I did, and did well in that as well. During the time when I was at Technical College, you had to have work experience, or had to have is probably a fluffy way of saying encouraged. And the first job I got was at the Mollington Bannister Hotel just outside Chester. And again, it was evenings, weekends, when they had banquets or weddings or receptions or whatever. And then over the holidays, like Christmas and whatever, assisting with all those sort of things. And I had quite a flair for it, and got on well with the managers and with the receptionists and the head waiters and all that. And so was asked to do more and more. And bless him, my dad used to drive me and then pick me up every time that I went. And I suppose it was about 20 odd miles away from where we lived. And I'd stay in the hotel for the weekend or for the week or whatever it was during the holidays. And initially, for the Christmas one, I used to share with other people from the college, um, but until it was discovered that some of them would come from challenging backgrounds, shall I say, were pinching the silver knives and forks. And so it ended up that I was the only one who carried on working at the Morlington Bannister Hotel. And I learned a lot there. And I loved working there. And they gave me responsibility. So I remember one of the things that happened. I used to live in the coach house just by the side of the hotel. And we had a wedding come at the last minute. And the head waiter was on holiday. And so the assistant manager was in charge. And he was panicking because there was no flowers and they couldn't get any flowers in time. And so I was tasked to come up with a plan. And they had quite extensive grounds. And one of the things that I had learned when I was doing a hotel bookkeeping, reception and management course was that you have to think outside the box. And so I did this huge display made up of holly and bits of tree and berries and stuff that are found in the grounds. And, you know, the different coloured leaves because it was, you know, autumn. And for me, it was an opportunity because I liked to be creative to do something that I really enjoyed. And it was really great because I got a bonus, but also they invited me back for the summer holidays. Then I needed different sort of experience. So when I was 16 and a half in the summer holidays, I got a job working at Pontins in Southport for the summer season. And I was only 16 and a half. And the catering manager, he had this very protective view of me. So he used to make sure I went to bed at the right time and, you know, I was protected from all the things that could have happened. And did happen to others, but not to me, praise the Lord. That's why I feel that, you know, God has always been in my life and protected me in ways that I'd not realized. Anyway, I used to do the breakfast and lunch shift. So I'd be 4 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I used to have I used to have for breakfast fab lolly ice. And they're the ones with ice cream and a bit of flavored topping covered in hundreds and thousands. And I used to have that for breakfast. I was young, you know, I just fancied a fab for breakfast. And I remember one particular time when Fred Pontins came and visited, and they were all flustered about what was going to. And he decided he was going to eat in the restaurant. And the chef had gone off for his afternoon rest, and I was cleaning up, and I was the only one there. And Fred Ponton decided he wanted a steak. Well, I knew the steaks that were left were not very good. In fact, they were very poor quality. And I looked at this steak and I thought, what am I going to do? Here's Fred Ponton's. The place is named after him. He founded the thing. So I decided, having learned some of the little tricks of the trade in catering college, I got a rolling pin and I beat the daylights out of that steak. And I covered it in salt and pepper and whatever, and cooked him the steak and chips and veg, what he wanted. And he came and thanked me and said it was the best steak he'd ever had. that was really funny. And one of the other things that stands out from the time that I was there was that Eva Roya Steyer came, and she was that year's Miss World. And she was very, very lovely and beautiful. but she was thin as a rake, and she was followed round by all these, I don't know what they were, whether they were helpers or minders or protection or whatever they were. You know, I always used to say it was like flies round a cowpat. You know, they were all over. But she was really nice, and I cooked her meals for her, which were, you know, like budgie feed type portions. And one of the other things that I used to do, because obviously I finished at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was I used to have a sleep, and then I was paid £6, 7 and 6 a week at Pontins, but I earned another £1, 7 and 6 to get some of the older ladies up to dance when their husbands couldn't dance. And of course, when I was young, I learned how to do ballroom dancing, so I was in great demand. But that's when the catering manager used to come collect me to take me back to my room to make sure that I didn't get taken advantage of, shall we say. One of the things sticks in my mind, and of course, in my younger days, I went to church. Obviously, I had good experiences as well as bad experiences. But I'd learned about Jesus, and I'd learned about religion. Anyway, one lady who, and I think she must have been in her mid to late 50s, she was in the washing up area, and we were having our 4 o'clock dinner, because obviously all your meal times are out of kilter. You know, you have them when you finish service. And we were having our meal, and afterwards we were having a cup of tea. And she said that she wanted to read my palm. I know that's a big no, but at the time I didn't understand, you know, because to be honest, even though all these things had happened in my life, I was very naive. And she kept on saying I had to give her a comb. And I thought, what's the hell is a comb? No idea what. She says, you got to cross my palm with a comb. I thought, well, I don't know what is a comb. She says, money. Anyway, and it had to be silver. Anyway, I can't remember whether it was a shilling or half a crown, 2 and 6 I gave her. And she started to read my palm about my future. And then she says, oh my God, I've got to go now. And then she rushed off. And I thought, what what is she seeing? Am I going to die? You know, or something. Anyway, that night, unbeknown to me, she packed her things and left. And she resigned from her job, and she was never seen again. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know. Anyway, I put it out of my mind because I was so busy doing the work anyway. Didn't think about it. And now looking back, perhaps she realized or saw that God was going to be involved in my life and that she was on the other side. So there's interesting little snippets of time when I'm doing my work experience at Pontins, and I enjoyed it. And I made friends with a lot of people who were a lot older than me, and they used to come and tell me all their problems, and I'd just sit there and listen and say, "Well, that's foolish. Why don't you go and tell her?" You know, and stuff like that. I don't know what it was. It was also very funny, linking into what I think I said in the last one about how when I was 11-year-old and I took a service, you know, I even said, well, perhaps you need to say the Lord's Prayer and ask God to forgive you. I had no idea what I was saying, but anyway. When I finished technical college, oh dear, when I think about it, when I finished technical college, you know, I thought, well, I need to get a job. And there just so happened to be an opportunity to work with some privately owned hotels on the south coast of England, with a group called Concord Hotels. And they're all privately owned hotels, and they were all 5-star hotels. And I thought, well, this is a good opportunity. And basically, it was a 3-year course, and I'd spend 6 months in different hotels in different departments learning how to be a manager. And I thought, well, that's good, you know, and it was quite innovative that they had an outline of the Concorde and all the dots connected where the hotels were. And so, you know, it was living in, it was not a fantastic wage, but, you know, I was learning the ropes and I didn't expect to have a fantastic wage, but I was getting food and I was getting accommodation. And also they'd pay my accommodation between the different my transport between the different hotels and from home and to work and that sort of stuff when it was break time. And it was a really good opportunity, but it was a shock to the family because they always felt that I was the stay-at-home boy and my brother was the one who'd fly off and do all the stuff, but it actually turned out that it was the other way around. And as I say, I worked for 3 years in 5-star hotels in different departments, learning the ropes. I worked at the Lig & Arms in Broadway, in Worcestershire, which is a very world-renowned place because it's not far from Stratford upon Avon, where the Americans used to come. Well, we were packed with Americans, and they used to go to Stratford to see some of Shakespeare's plays and see round Stratford, and then come back late at night and have high tea. So, and I worked there, assisting the assistant manager, but also working in the porterage department and doing night portering and, you know, carrying bags, but also making sandwiches or whatever requests that guests needed overnight. And it was owned by the Barrington family, who were very well known for furniture making. And it was a fascinating time in an unbelievably beautiful location. And because I was willing, I ended up working in the restaurant and all over the place because I wanted, you know, to learn stuff. I also went to the Runnymede Hotel, and the Runnymede is just up the road. It's it was then a brand new 5-star hotel, not far from where the Magna Carta was signed, and, you know, worked in the bars and different things. Went to a hotel in Sutton Bender near Chippenham in Wiltshire, and that was run by a French couple. And I worked in the kitchens there, and there are a few things I remember about working at the Bell House Hotel in Sutton Bender. It was a small, so it only had, I can't remember how many bedrooms, but it only had about 10 or 12, but it was very exclusive. You know, they used to fly the French beans in from France. And, you know, I obviously was able to put my chefing skills to good use. And the chef was German and very strict. And the lady who worked in reception in the afternoon did afternoon teas, and she used to serve them because she knew all the locals and all the regulars. And I was on duty doing the chocolate mousses and the little cakes and the sandwiches and you know. And we had an order come through which said that the person was paying double because they wanted the ham cut thickly and with mustard. So I cut this ham, you know, with the carving knife thickly, and made these sandwiches and put the mustard on and everything that was on the order. And the chef came on and went absolutely mad as a hatter. And he took the carving knife and he slapped me across the face with the carving knife. When I think about it now, you know, it was a miracle I didn't have my chops cut off. I was so in shock. And I lived up the road in a room attached to a bar in a pub. And so I went home to my room and I was there 2 or 3 days just shaking like this. And while I was there, a steamroller rally happened nearby and went past my bedroom, and I used to, because of everything's shaking like this because of the steamrollers going down the country lane alongside the pub. Well, that was quite an amazing memory. And I also remember somebody trying to get into my room because there was a door from my room straight into the main bar, and they thought that my bedroom was the toilet. But that's another story. And over the road from the hotel was a church, and I used to go to the services. Usually the 8 a.m. said Holy Communion service. And I made friends with one of the lads who was the son of the church warden there, who also worked in the hotel. And the churchyard around it had weeds that were more than 6 feet high. And so the church warden's son and I decided that we would volunteer to cut back some of this jungle. And a local farmer said, "Oh, I'll help you." And he gave us the snippers and all the rest of it. And then he had one of these, it was like a mini tractor that you held on and you went forward, and it had a blade like a hedge cutter that went like this on the front to cut down all the high stuff. But the church warden's son had to go off to do something, and so I was left to my own devices with this petrol machine cutting down the 6-foot stuff. All he said was, "You press this, you do this, you do that, do the other." And I went, right, okay. So I started it off, and I was doing okay. And for some reason, I pressed a button that I'd not noticed before and didn't know what it did. But it sped up this thing, and it was, and I'm holding on to the back of it. And for most people who know that church graveyards are about 6 foot up from the road. So there's a wall at the front of the church with the graveyard on the other side, and then there's a 6-foot drop, and then the pavement, and then the road. Anyway, this thing's going like this, and I went over the wall. Oh, I can see it today. I can feel the panic now. And it fell off the wall down 6 foot and broke this front cutter thing off the front of his little tractor. Oh, I was terrified of him getting back, and he was so upset and so mad. But then he calmed down and realized it was partly his fault, but I was banned from ever setting foot in the graveyard again. Another place I went to was in Beaconsfield, and it was at a place that was the old the Bell House Hotel in Beaconsfield, and it was expanding, and so there was a huge building with many floors, and and I worked in the restaurant there, and I had a Spanish head waiter, and it was full on, shall we say. We were always full, we were always busy, there was always events, and my room was on the top floor, and there were lots of foreign nationals working as waiters and chambermaids and all, and we lived in a unit that was next to the ballroom and entertainment suites. And my room was over the ballroom, and they went on till 2:30 in the morning. But the loudspeakers were attached to my floor, which was up to the ceiling in the ballroom. And so when they were having their discos and whatever, the floor would vibrate like this. And also the room had a sloping roof, and there was that went over the roof of the ballroom, and there was like a cupboard, so you could get access into this space over ceiling of the ballroom, and it was full of mice. And they used to come and visit regularly, and I do not like mice. So I was standing on my bed, chucking my suitcase at it, then realised it was dead after I chucked both my suitcases at it. But I couldn't sleep, with the noise. And if I wanted to go to the toilet, there were 3 toilets on the corridor, and the first one, how shall I put this, was condemned, filled with you know what, broken toilet seat, broken door, smelled to high heaven, and nobody ever dealt with it. And this is why they were refurbing and changing and doing all sorts. Anyway, after a while, when I wasn't sleeping and I was working hard and all the rest of it, one other thing that I must say was that part of my work ethic was because my dad had said, you'll end up brushing the streets. I now know that's because that's what his father said to him. But I took it to heart and I thought, well, I'm going to prove my dad wrong. I'm not. I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to succeed. And so I worked all hours. Everything that I could do, I did. I volunteered for everything. Anyway, eventually it got to me and I had nervous exhaustion, and all my mouth was all swollen, covered in blisters inside and out, and got glandular fever at the same time. Anyway, I had to go off sick with it. But before I'd gone, one of the waiters had tried it on with me, and I told him that I was not interested. Anyway, I think I was off about 9 weeks. And when I came back, there were 300 envelopes, brown envelopes, on the desk of the head waiter's little office, all full of pornography adverts, because he'd registered me with all these companies. And obviously the head waiter, I think, had opened one. And I was due to be student of the year across the network. And he put in the report that every time there was hard work, I went off sick. And that was the end of that. My next job was in Torquay, working mainly in the bars, but also helping in the restaurant or wherever. The manager and his wife, I really liked them and got on well with them. But he was an alcoholic. And so lots of times I used to cover for him and help him. And that got me a lot of good reviews with the owners, who also owned the Runnymede Hotel that I mentioned earlier, and other hotels within Torquay. So when it came to me finishing my training, I was offered a job at a hotel in High Wycombe, which was opposite the parish church, and I became an assistant there. But I was still young, I think I was 20 and a half, something like that. And the youngest member of staff at that time was 60. And they say, who the heck are you telling us what to do? So they used to call me Hitler, because I used to go around and say, you'll do this. See? Anyway, it didn't work. And I started going to church over the road. And the only, I became a server with the chalice at communion. I started doing bell ringing on a Monday night, and the manager didn't like it because, and I said, but I'm legally allowed to go to church, what you were then. And the vicar was such a case, Father Crisp, and he used to travel around in his black cassock with shorts underneath the cassock and socks with suspenders, these elastic braces thing. And he used to drive around on his bike and pull his cassock between his legs, and he had heart of gold. It was really funny, and I had lots of opportunities there. And one of the things I started to do was that the staff room was a bit of a mess, and I asked the owners, could I have new linoleum on the floor and this, that, and the other, and started tweaking things and started sorting out the cellar and the stock orders, and to make it easier to see what stock we had, and all the stuff that I've always done. And I used to wear a morning suit with the pinstripe trousers and black jacket and all the rest of it. Anyway, I realised that these older people were not going to take any notice of me unless I changed. So I decided, well, I've always felt that I'm never going to ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So I used to clean the men's toilets. I used to clear the tables, help with the bar, carry stuff for people, do whatever was necessary. And actually, that was a turning point in many ways. We had a general assistant who was one of the students in the subsequent years who was learning his ropes there. And we got on really well, and we came up with a routine where we could, he'd be because we had 3 bars, he'd be on one of the bars and I'd look after the other 2, and then we'd swap over and he'd then go into reception and whatever. And that worked really well for a while. The manager and his wife, I don't know whether I can say this, but the wife was definitely the one in charge. And the husband, I got on well with both of them. He discovered that, I was a church person because he used to be a choir boy in a cathedral. I won't mention which one it was. And I was saying this, that, and the other. And I think what it was that triggered it, I mentioned about what the vicar had done to me. I had not said much. I said a little bit, and he changed just like that. And then I became enemy number 1. Then I thought, well, I've got to think about what I'm going to do next. Then one weekend when the manager and his wife were off, there was this man that came into the bar, and he used to come with his girlfriend. And then one week he came without her, and he started to drink unbelievable. So I had to say, I'm sorry, you've got to ease back on drinking, because it's not good for you. And then he suddenly collapsed. Anyway, we called the ambulance, and the general assistant came and he took over, and I went with him to the hospital in West High Wycombe. And it transpired that he'd had a big row with his girlfriend. And basically she'd thrown him out, and he tried to kill himself by shooting himself in the chest with a crossbow. And I remember being in intensive care, him going downhill rapidly, because basically he was so down and depressed that he wanted to die. And I remember praying the Lord's Prayer with him, and I remember him saying, you know, nobody cares about me. I said, but I care about you. I'm here. I could be back at work, but I'm here because I care and I don't want you to die. Anyway, he did survive. But because of my next career move, I never saw him again. But it's interesting, all the things that you remember. And in a lot of ways, I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought, oh my goodness, he's ill. He's collapsed in the bar. I'm the manager on duty. I've got to look after one of my customers. And you know, went to hospital with him, and praise the Lord, he recovered. But as I say, I never saw him again. And it was quite emotional also when I decided to move on. Because I'd built quite a loving relationship with families who took me out for meals and stuff at the church, and you know, so it was difficult. But my next choice was that the general assistant was also looking at, well, what am I going to do? I can't be coping with people dropping in the bars because they tried to commit suicide, and there were other things that happened about people being drunk and fighting and all that stuff. So we both looked, and I discovered that there were some vacancies with P&O, the cruise ship company, P&O, Pacific and Oriental Steam Navigation Company. I also discovered that P&O, they were the ones who coined the phrase posh. And basically, if you were posh, it meant you had some money. And because there was no air conditioning on the ships in those days, you would have a cabin on the port out and starboard home, because that was in the shade. So it was quite interesting. So my next foray for the lad who's going to stay at home was, I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to see the world and get paid for it. So I decided to apply to join the Merchant Navy. Went through all the legal paperwork to get my merchant sailors different passport. So I'm going to stop here. This is will be the next installment. Will be some of my adventures on the ship that I joined and what happened next. So until next time, it's a big God bless you from me, Greg. Bye.